See how balanced Dr. Boom is? Pretty balanced.
We actually don't have any plans right now to change Dr. Boom, and we're not looking at it.
Are you ready, guys, for the comeback of Dr. Boom? Oh, look at this. Dr. Mega Boom, guys. Dr. Mega Boom.
Let's get salty!
Hey everyone, Zeddy here again today with a brand new video. In today's topic, I wanted to talk about power creep in Hearthstone, and has it gone too far? Is it gone too far? And what made me talk about this? What made me think about it? Well, in general, we always, power creep is a often used term talking about the game, but Igzar was recently asked on his AMA this week about Crab Rider. Is it too powerful? And in his comparison tweet, he said not yet. He didn't think it was too powerful or warrants a nerf, but he mentioned cards like Firefly, Tar Creeper, Sludge Belcher as kind of comparison cards. And I thought about them like, those cards don't see play in Wild at all. And then I thought more about Crab Rider and the fact that it's like a flying machine, but 1 mana cheaper with an extra keyword, and how that seems kind of reasonable in today's Hearthstone. And how has that happened? Well, that's through power creep. Another card just being straight out better than another card almost entirely. Like, it's a mana cheaper extra keyword. The only difference is it dies to a hungry crab rather than, flying machine dies to an EMP operative or something like that. Like, there's very minute differences, but overall, it's a power creep card. And we've seen a lot of examples of this, but I wanted to discuss today how power creep has basically affected Hearthstone, how it's come into it, its kind of history in Hearthstone, and basically, is it a good or a bad thing for the game? Should power creep exist, and especially at the levels it does today? So I thought it'd be interesting to kind of go through like a little history lesson, somewhat of like power creep in Hearthstone, how the team has tried to like kind of decrease it at times, how they've increased it at times, and where we're at. So a good starting point is the introduction of the Wild format, right? When it was originally introduced, it was to try to open up design space for Hearthstone, like the whole thing. It was like, well, we're gonna see the same cards forever and ever, right? Like Dr. Boom was the best 7 drop in the game, as you saw in the intro there. Best 7 drop in the game, and it was auto-included in so many different decks, and like, it's what's gonna ever be better than Dr. Boom? So they eventually, made the Hall of Fame, they made the Wild format where they could put cards there so they could open up the, design space for other stuff rather than just having to make something crazy and more powerful. And we even saw like Azure Drake, Ragnaros, Sylvanas, all Hall of Famed in that first batch during, I think, the Old Gods release. So again, was to open up things so that they could make cards that, you could actually play instead of them. By the way, when was the last time you saw Dr. Boom, Ragnaros, Sylvanas, or Azure Jake played in Wild? Yeah, not very often at all. So after the introduction of the Wild format, we saw, I believe, the Old God, Main Streets of Gadgetzan, and Ungoro, all these expansions plus an adventure in there. And, the power level of those cards were pretty strong. There was some really busted stuff, in particular, like Patches the Pirate. But overall, nothing like ridiculous. There was a lot of varied stuff. The whole change to Wild had really shake things up, and a lot of Wild cards saw like a ton of play that would have seen play for sure in Standard, like Dr. Boom would have likely seen play in Standard, but things started to really change. The power level of cards really stepped up once the Knights of the Frozen Throne expansion hit, when we were introduced to Death Knights. Death Knights are like the hero cards that we know today. To use for an example, at Blood Reaver Gul'dan, one of the most powerful cards ever, you would transform your hero into another hero that would get a new hero power and have a crazy effect, where Gul'dan would resummon a bunch of demons and you get life steal, hero power, and it was just, the power level of these cards were beyond anything we'd ever seen before, beyond anything in Wild, that's for sure. And they're so powerful that they still see play today in Wild all the time. Like, these are very powerful cards. This continued with Kobolds, where we saw like legendary weapons, we saw some insane cards. The power level of cards hit a new high. They hit a new high despite the whole Wild thing, despite, we can make more creative cards and not go crazy like this. it just went crazy. And these two expansions shaped the meta for their entire existence, because the next year, when we saw the introduction of the Witchwood, the team made a collective effort to scale back power level. This entire year, the majority of the power level derived from prior years, mainly Frozen Throne and Kobolds. We did see Gen and Baku in the Witchwood, which got Hall of Famed a year early, by the way, but outside of that, it wasn't that insane a year, and it culminated with the whole Rostikin's Rumble expansion. Year End expansion, regarded as one of the worst expansions of all time, where the power level of those cards barely made a dent in the meta. But a lot of that, again, was because of the insane power level of Kobolds, of Frozen Throne, and teams' unwillingness to power creep those sets and go even crazier. They're like, we're gonna dial it back. We're gonna wait for those sets to go out, and then we'll usher in this new year, start fresh, and then maybe not go so crazy. But Rostikin's Rumble was such a disaster, and I sure it was a disaster financially, because when Rise of Shadows came out and the new rotation happened, we got probably the most busted expansion to date. All of a sudden, we had an insane power creep Dr. Boom, which we showed in the intro as well. We saw Lackey, some of the most busted little one drops ever. We saw Mage get like ridiculous stuff like Conjurer's Calling, Mana Cyclone. The power level in Rise of Shadows was incredible, and all of a sudden we went from a Rostikin's Rumble, dialing it back to, well, screw it, we're just going crazy with Rise of Shadows, and the power creep began again. Then saw Saviors of Doom, which was pretty powerful, not quite Rise of Shadows, and then things went absolutely insane. Descent of Dragons occurred. We had the Galacrons, which were broken. We had Dragon Queen Alexstrasza and all the dragon stuff broken. There was so much insane stuff from Descent of Dragons. It is the most nerfed expansion of all time. It is beyond ridiculous, and many of these cards see very meta play in WoW today. And basically, since Descent of Dragons, every expansion there after that has basically tried to step it up, to one up the last. All of a sudden, we went back from trying to dial things back with like a Rostikin's Rumble, a Witchwood, to every single expansion forever and ever now is going to dial it up. So we saw Ashes of Outland, where we got Demon Hunter, which was effectively just power creep every class and do everything better than everything, and it broke the game. But again, that was more power creep. We have the next expansion, Skullman's Academy, step it up even more, where we had like Secret Passage, one of the most broken cards ever, Guardian Animals at 7, ridiculous. And then we had Dark Moon Fair, which had like Cage Match Custodian, Crab Rider, Nitro Boost in the mini set. They just keep stepping it up. And then the latest expansion, right? Forge of the Barons, we have Refreshing Springwater, 4 mana, draw 2 cards, or sorry, 0 mana, draw 2 cards, sometimes gain some mana with an Incanter's Flow, and Sword of Judgment, which has already been nerfed. We have Knight of Anointment, 1 mana Novice Engineer, Efficient Octobot, which is just Emperor Thorson, neutral, but 2 mana. Just ridiculous. Like, the power level has escalated every expansion basically since Rise of Shadows, and it seems to be that's the way it's going to be going forward. As you can see, basically every expansion since Rostikin's Rumble, Blizzard and Hearthstone have just been trying to avoid another Rostikin's Rumble. Ultimately, the point is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? And I think it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I don't think anybody was a fan of Rostikin's Rumble. Nobody was a fan of that low power level, uninteresting stuff, because let's be real, we like to play Hearthstone to do broken stuff, and to do broken stuff, you got to play broken cards, and they got to make broken cards. So they have done that. But when they push the envelope every expansion so much that, look at WoW today, it's kind of emblematic of this. You look at like a Dark Lair Warlock, most of those cards are relatively recent in the last couple of years. A lot of what Secret Mage uses is from the last recent years. Hand Buff Paladin as well. It has some old tools in there, but mostly it's shaped by the new, even more powerful cards than anything that was put into Wild to, you know, open up design space. So basically going forward, it seems like the design philosophy is every expansion, we want more power level. We want it to outdo the last one. We want to sell these packs. We want to get players interested and get in there. And that's inherently a relatively good thing, right? You want to do that. But the drawbacks are, first, it's expensive to keep up with, right? Because you got to keep buying the packs for the new expansions. And that can be tough for a lot of players, especially when there's 3 expansions, 3 mini sets a year, and you know, the game is still not the cheapest thing in the world. It's gotten better, but it's not the cheapest thing in the world. As well as them pushing the boundaries, them pushing the power level of cards so much has led to them breaking the game more often than ever. Like every expansion almost, the game breaks, whether it's a Deck of Lunacy, a Demon Hunter, a Secret Passage, or whatever. It's like a constant thing. Galacron Shaman, right? constant thing, which leads to more balance patches than ever, which leads to people having to get new decks after their deck has been nerfed more than ever. It can create a frustrating experience, but the high power level of the crazy stuff to do can also be great. So I think it's about finding that right balance of how far, how much do we push the power creep, and I think they're trying to figure it out. And honestly, I don't know if they're quite there yet. I'm hoping to get there, but I just thought it'd be an interesting debate to have. Do you think the power creep has gone too far? Is it not enough? Would you like to see more of it? Personally, I'd like to see it scale back just a tiny bit, but overall, I understand why they do it, where it's coming from, and I just thought it was just interesting to kind of go through their change in philosophy with power creep over the years. So if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Have a great day and stay salty, my friends.